This is the Sleep Historian. Each night we explore the echoes of the past, stories told slowly to calm the mind and ease you towards sleep. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through time, please like and subscribe, and let the next story begin. Before stone, before measurements, there is sand and light. The Giza Plateau lies quiet under a pale Egyptian dawn. The air is cool for now, carrying a faint dust that settles on broken rock. In the distance, the Nile moves in a broad, slow curve, hidden behind strips of green. Above, stars fade as the sky brightens from deep blue to soft gold. You stand where, for thousands of years, people will come to stare upward in wonder. But tonight there is nothing here except wind, empty bedrock, and the quiet intention of a future king. Let us drift back to when that intention first took shape. Time loosens its hold, and the modern silhouettes around Giza dissolve. You find yourself moving along the Nile in the 3rd millennium BCE. The river is the spine of this world. Each year its flood spreads dark silt across the fields, then retreats, leaving land ready for grain. Villages sit on slightly higher ground, their mud brick walls warming in the morning sun. Smoke rises from cooking fires. In the royal court, far from these small homes, another idea moves quietly. How a king should rest when his earthly life ends, and how stone might make that rest endure. Follow the river north toward Memphis, where the royal residence lies near the valley's narrow waist. Here power is both practical and sacred. The king is seen not just as a ruler, but as a bridge between sky and earth. Earlier generations of kings were buried in mastabas, low, flat-topped tombs of mud brick and stone. They look like solid benches in the desert, neat shapes against the sand. Inside, shafts lead down to burial chambers stocked with food, pottery, and carved images. The goal is simple and profound: to support a continued existence beyond the visible world. Now drift to the necropolis at Saqqara. The sand here is scattered with older tombs, walls decorated with offerings and daily scenes. At the center of this landscape, a new idea is being tested. You stand before the step pyramid of Djoser, rising in layered terraces above the desert floor. Its architect, Imhotep, has taken the mastaba shape and repeated it upward, transforming a low rectangle into a stacked, ascending form. Sunlight catches each step, casting long shadows down the sides. For the first time, a royal tomb reaches visibly toward the sky, suggesting ascent rather than simple enclosure. Walk closer to Djoser's complex, and you notice the details. Limestone blocks fit together in clean courses. Colonnades imitate bundles of reeds, translated into stone so they can never wither. Courtyards open around you, planned for rituals that honor the king in life and after death. Priests move in measured paths, their linen garments rustling softly. The entire place feels like a stone version of a palace, familiar shapes fixed in more permanent material. The experiment works. Stone can create not just walls, but an entire world built to last. The question becomes, how far can this idea be taken? The scene shifts to the reign of Sneferu, a king who seems to think in geometry and stone. South of here, at Meidum, you see a pyramid that once stood smooth-sided, but now looks broken. Its outer layers collapsed into a ring of rubble. Further north, at Dashur, another structure changes shape as it rises. At a certain height, its steep angle is reduced, giving it a bent profile. Engineers have adjusted their plans while building, responding to the pressures within the stone. The bent pyramid stands as both achievement and lesson, a reminder that ambition must listen carefully to gravity. Not far away, another pyramid rises at Dashur, the Red Pyramid. This time the angle is moderate and consistent from base to peak. The form is clean, the lines steady. Workers move along ramps with blocks of limestone, their feet scuffing dust into the air. Sunlight gleams on newly placed stone. Inside, corbelled ceilings step inward, distributing weight carefully. Sneferu's builders have learned from earlier trials. They now understand height, angle, and mass in a way no one did before. With this structure, the true pyramid form, smooth-sided, balanced, stable, has finally been mastered. In the court of Sneferu's successor, Khufu, these lessons become foundation, not conclusion. Khufu inherits a kingdom with a well-organized administration, a skilled workforce, and experience in large-scale construction. He also inherits a desire to express kingship in enduring form. Discussions unfold in quiet, measured conversations. Where to build next, how large the structure could be, how to align it with the heavens and the Nile. Scribal hands move across papyrus, recording deliveries, labor groups, and offerings. Somewhere in these lists, years of human effort are reduced to neat signs, yet each mark represents real stone, real hands, real time. You rise above the desert edge to the plateau at Giza. The bedrock here is firm, slightly elevated above the river's floodplain. The view reaches far across green fields and shining water. Winds are steady, the horizon clear. It is a place that feels naturally set apart, yet connected. Surveyors stand with rods and cords, measuring distances with quiet focus. They mark corners with small piles of stone. Plans are not drawn in ink as you might imagine, but held in trained memory and simple tools: cords, stakes, sightlines. The decision settles. This will be Khufu's eternal horizon. Night falls over the chosen plateau. The air cools, and the sounds of daytime activity fade. Above, the stars sharpen into clear points. Certain stars near the northern sky never seem to set. They circle around an invisible center. To the Egyptians, these are the imperishable ones, living in an unending rotation. Astronomer priests raise simple instruments, aligning sight with star and ground. Over repeated nights, they fix directions, marking true north with impressive accuracy. On the sand below, a square is traced that will become the pyramid's base. In the stillness, geometry and starlight quietly meet. Morning returns to Giza, softer and cooler than you might expect from this place. The first task is not to stack stone, but to prepare the ground. Workers move across the plateau with wooden tools, baskets, and measuring cords. They chip away at uneven ridges of bedrock, filling hollows with rubble and gypsum mortar. Water from the Nile is carried up in jars and poured into shallow trenches to check level, the surface reflecting the sky in thin, temporary strips. Slowly, patiently, they create a near-perfect horizontal platform, a quiet foundation for everything that will rise above it. Down by the river, the supply lines take form. Quarries along the east bank yield fine Tura limestone, bright and smooth, destined for outer casing. Further upstream near Aswan, harder granite waits in rugged cliffs, its surface dark and speckled. You watch as channels are cut around potential blocks, wooden wedges driven into the gaps. Water soaks the wood, which swells and helps split stone from the bedrock with a muted crack. On shore, men smooth surfaces with dolerite pounding stones. A single block rests nearby, its edges sharp, still warm from the effort of separation. At the quays along the Nile, boats lie ready, long, shallow vessels built for cargo. Workers roll heavy blocks on logs toward the water's edge. The sound of wood on stone, stone on sand, creates a slow, grinding rhythm. Ropes rasp against wooden stanchions. The river itself remains calm, reflecting strips of blue sky and drifting palm shadows. As each block is eased aboard, scribes make small marks on potsherds or pieces of stone, noting counts and destinations. These fragments, ordinary and fragile, carry records of a monumental undertaking, written in the smallest of signs. Follow one of these boats as it moves northward with the current. The sail catches a steady breeze, canvas creaking softly. On deck, men sit near the stone cargo, sharing bread and dried fish. Their voices carry over the water in low conversation. The banks slide slowly past. Fields, trees, mud brick villages, distant shrines. At certain points, signals from shore guide the boats toward canals leading closer to Giza. The fleet does not rush. It moves in time with the river's heartbeat, each journey another quiet thread tying quarries, fields, workshops, and the plateau into one project. Back at Giza, the deliveries arrive in a steady, patient stream. Temporary harbors and channels bring boats as close to the site as possible. Ramps of earth and stone rise from the river edge toward the plateau. Teams guide blocks off the vessels onto sledges. The sledges themselves are simple, wooden runners and a flat surface, but they become the key tools of movement. Ahead of each, a worker pours water onto the sand, darkening it into a slick path. When the sledge moves, the difference is clear. The creak of wood, the drag of stone, all soften. Higher up on the plateau, a pattern of ramps, storage areas, and work zones begins to form. It is not a single rigid design, but a landscape that shifts as the project advances. Large, rougher blocks are placed in staging rows. Smaller teams handle finer pieces, destined for the interior chambers. Dust hangs in the air, turning sunlight into pale shafts. You notice details. A worker adjusting a linen headcloth against the glare. Another tightening his grip on a rope worn smooth by use. The entire site feels like a slow-breathing organism, each part aware of its role. Within this organism, organization is crucial. Laborers are grouped into crews with names that echo loyalty and pride. Friends of Khufu, drunkards of Menkaura, units joked about yet respected. Each crew is subdivided into smaller gangs, responsible for specific tasks: hauling, dressing, placing. Overseers move among them with staffs and writing pallets, checking progress, counting blocks, reallocating effort. You glimpse a foreman kneeling briefly to repair a broken sandal strap before standing again to direct another pull. Hierarchy exists, but it is practical rather than distant. The success of the whole depends on the steady work of many hands. As the first courses of stone rise above the leveled bedrock, a new rhythm settles over the site. From a distance, the emerging structure is still low, more like a broad platform than a pyramid. Up close, each block is as tall as a person's chest. Workers lean into crowbars, nudging stone into alignment. Others chip slight irregularities to ensure a tight fit. Chalk marks indicate placement. The angle of the sides is already planned, yet the early layers feel almost abstract, lines and edges without final form. The desert around remains open, waiting patiently for shape to appear. Time drifts forward. The pyramid grows, course upon course. From afar, what was once a low, pale shape now interrupts the horizon. You stand on the plateau and look up. The height is no longer something your mind can dismiss as temporary scaffolding. Sloping ramps cling to the faces, curving gently as they rise. On them, long lines of workers move like slow currents, hauling sledges upward. A shout travels down the line, then a pull in unison. The stone inches forward. A man near the front wipes sweat from his brow with the back of a dusty hand. On the eastern side, near the pyramid's base, another structure takes shape, the mortuary temple. Its walls rise from cut stone, forming courtyards, pillared halls, and storage rooms. Here, rituals will one day honor the king's continued presence. Reliefs show the monarch receiving offerings, hunting, and performing ceremonies. Artisans carve figures with deliberate strokes, the scent of limestone powder filling the air. One sculptor pauses to sharpen his copper chisel on a stone block, then returns to shaping a falcon-headed god. The temple and pyramid are two halves of the same idea: resting place and ritual heart, joined in stone. Inside the pyramid, the work is quieter, more enclosed. You move through passages still lit only by oil lamps. Their flames flicker, sending soft shadows across rough-cut stone. Above, the grand gallery ascends with corbelled walls that lean inward, each course slightly overhanging the last. The space feels both narrow and towering. Wooden scaffolding supports workers placing blocks in the ceiling. A mason runs his hand along a joint, checking for gaps. Air here smells of dust and smoke, held in close. These internal spaces will, once sealed, hold silence for a very long time. Deep beneath the pyramid's center, chambers cut into the rock lie in different stages of completion. Some are abandoned designs, test spaces, or alternative plans adapted as construction advanced. You see marks of tools on the walls, parallel grooves where copper chisels and stone hammers struck again and again. A discarded lamp lies in a corner, its wick blackened. The coolness is sharp, a contrast to the heat outside. Decisions made here affect the entire structure above. Where to place the main burial chamber, how to relieve weight, how to connect passages in a meaningful, symbolic path. Back in the open air, the casing stones begin to change the pyramid's appearance. Fine Tura limestone, smoother and brighter than the core blocks, is fitted along the sides. Workers polish the surfaces, rubbing with sand and stone until they catch the light cleanly. From below, the faces start to look less like stacked blocks and more like continuous planes. The sun reflects sharply along the edges, almost too bright to gaze at directly. At certain times of day, the pyramid seems to glow softly against the deeper blue of the sky, turning stone into something that looks like captured light. Around the base, a low perimeter wall outlines the immediate sacred area. Beyond it, causeways extend toward valley temples near the river, long, slightly sloping corridors that will guide processions. You walk along one such causeway under construction. Reliefs are being carved along its interior walls. Boats, offerings, royal scenes, the Nile in stylized patterns. The air is cooler inside this passage, shaded from direct sun. A boy carries a basket of chisels and mallets, setting them down for the older artisans. His bare feet leave light prints in the fine dust on the floor. As Khufu's pyramid nears completion, attention turns to the surrounding complex. Smaller pyramids for queens rise nearby, neat and proportionate. Mastabas for nobles and officials spread outward in ordered rows, each with its own chapel and false door. The necropolis becomes a stone city of the dead, mirroring the living city by the river. Priests, scribes, and overseers walk along newly laid paths, checking inscriptions and allocations. A scribe stops at the edge of a trench to tie a fresh roll of papyrus to his belt. The landscape has shifted from empty plateau to carefully structured memory field. The final act of building approaches, the placement of the pyramid's capstone, the pyramidion. Its exact appearance is debated by later ages, but here you see it clearly. A carefully shaped stone, perhaps once sheathed in gold or electrum. The block is raised slowly, inch by inch, using ropes, levers, and human coordination honed over years of work. On the summit, a small team waits in the thin, bright air. When the stone finally settles into place, there is no grand shout, just a quiet release of breath, a few exchanged glances, and the desert wind moving steadily around the completed form. Life does not pause because a monument is finished. Around Giza, the daily routines continue. At the workers' village south of the plateau, bakeries and breweries produce food for those still involved in finishing tasks and maintaining the site. You walk through narrow lanes between mud brick houses. The smell of fresh bread and warm beer mingles with dust and cooking smoke. Inside one courtyard, a woman shapes dough into loaves, her hands moving with practiced ease. Nearby, a man repairs a woven mat by the doorway. Their world is simple, rhythmic, and closely tied to the stone silhouettes looming just beyond view. In long, low rooms near the village, scribes sit at wooden pallets, tallying rations and labor days. Ostraca, broken pieces of pottery, serve as writing surfaces for quick notes and lists. One shard records how many loaves and jars of beer a particular crew received. Another notes a worker absent due to illness. These records, seemingly mundane, reveal the care taken to manage thousands of lives. A scribe pauses to stretch his fingers, then blows gently on newly written ink to help it dry. Outside, the faint sound of a drum marks the change of a work shift. On the plateau itself, teams maintain ramps, adjust paths, and oversee finishing work on nearby structures. The pyramid stands complete, but the complex is still active. Priests move through the newly built mortuary temple, learning the sequence of rituals and spaces. They practice carrying offerings, reciting texts, and presenting incense at the correct doorways. The temple's polished floors reflect faint images of their movement. A small flicker of lamp flame catches on the surface of an offering table, bright for a moment, before settling back to a steady glow. The rituals they rehearse are meant to continue for generations. At certain times of year, processions arrive from the valley temple. You watch as lines of priests, attendants, and musicians walk along the causeway, carrying baskets of bread, jars of beer, bundles of vegetables, and cuts of meat. Sistra and drums provide a soft, rhythmic backdrop. The air carries the scent of incense and roasted fowl. In the mortuary temple, offerings are set before statues and stelae representing the king. Words of praise and continuity are spoken. Outside, the desert remains quiet, its wide surface absorbing sound. The pyramid stands beyond the temple, a constant shape behind these moving scenes. Closer to the pyramid's base, inspectors walk along the lower courses, checking for cracks, shifts, or damage from weather. Sand gathers in small drifts against the lowest stones, moved constantly by the wind. A man kneels to brush grit from a joint, running his fingertips along the line where two blocks meet. It is smooth, still tight. Nearby, another worker adjusts a small drainage channel to divert rare rainwater away from the foundation. These tasks are not dramatic, but they are essential. Long endurance depends as much on quiet maintenance as on grand construction. In the villages along the Nile, the pyramids are both distant and present. Farmers look up from their fields during rest breaks and see the hazy outlines on the horizon, pale against the sky. Children ask questions about them, and elders answer with a mix of knowledge and legend. For some, they are symbols of royal power. For others, part of the accepted landscape like distant hills. At dusk, when the light softens, the pyramids take on a gentle clarity. Their edges blur slightly as dust hangs in the air, and the day's heat begins to drift away. Generations pass. Khufu's grandson Menkaure completes his own smaller pyramid at Giza, accompanied by its temple and subsidiary structures. The plateau becomes a layered record of successive reigns, each king adding to the stone conversation. Yet even as new tombs are built, the earliest pyramids begin to age. Casing stones loosen in places, edges soften. Inscriptions in chapels and mastabas mention repairs, or the refurbishment of older statues. Somewhere in this gradual shift you sense a quiet foreshadowing, the understanding that even great stone projects require care, and that the attention they receive will ebb and flow with time. Far from the desert, changes unfold in the broader kingdom. Administrative centers shift. New royal priorities emerge. Later kings look to other sites for their tombs, further south at Dashur, Lisht, and beyond. Techniques learned at Giza travel with them, adapted to new landscapes and different visions of the afterlife. Giza remains important, but it is no longer the active frontier of royal construction. From the plateau, you can imagine the capital's sounds moving slightly away. The concentration of labor, the loudest commands, the newest experiments. The pyramids stay where they are, quiet and solid, as attention gradually moves on. Centuries smooth over individual lifetimes. You stand again on the plateau at Giza, but the air feels different now. Not in temperature, but in time. The pyramids are no longer brand new. Sand has climbed higher around their bases. Some casing stones remain, bright patches among rougher surfaces where outer layers have fallen or been removed. The mortuary and valley temples still function, though with fewer priests than before. On certain days, offerings are brought, incense burned, hymns recited. On others, the spaces lie still, doors closed, their interiors holding a quiet, settled dust. Within the nearby mastaba fields, families continue to visit tomb chapels. They bring small offerings, speak names aloud, and trace hieroglyphs with their fingertips. In these low structures, everyday people of status, scribes, overseers, craftsmen, have secured their place beside the great royal tombs. The walls show scenes of fishing, farming, music, and games. They are reminders that life itself, with its ordinary pleasures, was considered worth preserving. The pyramids rise behind these chapels, larger and more abstract. Together they form a layered view of memory, monumental on the horizon, personal at arm's length. As political centers shift further south to new capitals like Thebes, Giza's role changes subtly. Fewer royal resources arrive for upkeep. Some buildings fall into disrepair. Stone becomes a valuable commodity in its own right. In later periods, blocks from older structures are reused in new temples, walls, and foundations. You see small teams removing carefully cut stones from a less prominent building, loading them onto barges. Their work is not careless, it is practical. Yet each block leaving the plateau takes a fragment of the original complex away, altering the balance between what remains and what is remembered. Night in the necropolis grows quieter. Without constant activity, the sounds of wind and shifting sand become more noticeable. Stories begin to circulate about the dangers of entering sealed spaces. Spirits disturbed, curses spoken, unseen consequences. These tales serve both as warning and as acknowledgement that the tombs still hold meaning. Over time, some are nevertheless entered by those seeking valuables. The details of these intrusions are lost, but the evidence is plain. Broken seals, scattered fragments, missing objects. The Great Pyramids, with their complex internal systems, are more difficult to exploit, yet even they are not entirely untouched. The centuries accumulate into millennia. Foreign powers arrive, Persians, then Greeks, then Romans. Each encounters the pyramids as ancient monuments already standing. Greek visitors marvel at their scale and speculate about their builders. Some attribute them to legendary figures, others to different kings than those we know today. Inscriptions are carved in new scripts atop older stones, layering interpretation over intention. A Greek traveler squints upward at the sunlit faces and shades his eyes with one hand. For him, the pyramids are both impressive and mysterious, their original context partially obscured by the long span between their creation and his curiosity. In the early Islamic period, Giza remains a place of interest and materials. Accounts speak of attempts to open or explore the Great Pyramid, efforts that leave visible scars on its northern face. Casing stones, especially those of high quality, are removed over generations to repair or adorn buildings in nearby Cairo and Fustat. You watch as a block, once part of a smooth outer surface, is eased down along a constructed ramp. The work is slow, methodical, and focused on reuse. With each stone removed, the inner core becomes more visible, and the pyramid's profile grows rougher, more stepped. By the time early European travelers arrive with sketchbooks and measuring rods, the pyramids stand as weathered shapes in a landscape of sand and scattered ruins. Drawings capture their outlines against the sky, camels resting at their feet, local guides leading visitors along worn paths. Some climb the roughened faces, counting courses as they go. Others take measurements of bases and angles, seeking mathematical patterns or hidden messages. In the still heat, a man sets down his notebook on a casing stone fragment, carefully copying hieroglyphs he cannot yet read. The pyramids continue to invite questions, even as their builders' voices remain silent. The turning of understanding comes quietly in the 19th and 20th centuries. Systematic archaeology develops, with careful excavation replacing casual digging. At Giza, scholars like Flinders Petrie and others measure, record, and analyze with a new level of precision. Workers uncover the remains of workers' villages, bakeries, and breweries, revealing the living infrastructure behind the stone. Hieroglyphs are decoded, allowing ancient inscriptions to speak again. You stand beside a grid of marked trenches, ropes and stakes defining squares in the sand. A small brush clears dust from a carved name. The story of the pyramids begins to expand beyond myth into recovered detail. Modern Giza is a layered place. The city of Cairo extends almost to the base of the plateau, its streets alive with traffic, voices, and everyday concerns. Yet when you step up onto the desert platform, the sound changes. Wind becomes more noticeable. The ground firms underfoot. The pyramids rise in front of you, their surfaces rough but their lines still remarkably true. Visitors from around the world move at different paces, some quietly, some in lively groups. A guide gestures toward the Great Pyramid, explaining dates and dimensions. Behind his words lies a deeper, older story of planning, labor, and belief. Inside the Great Pyramid, electric lights trace a path along corridors that once knew only lamplight and darkness. You follow a narrow passage, feeling the smoothness of stone worn by countless hands. The air is cooler, still. In the king's chamber, granite blocks fit together with astonishing precision, their joints almost invisible. The ceiling's weight is carried by hidden relieving chambers above. A single, plain stone box stands as the centerpiece of the room. It is empty, yet not meaningless. Around it, you can sense the accumulated presence of those who have entered, wondered, and left again over thousands of years. Back outside, the plateau reveals smaller details easily overlooked. Close to the pyramids, tombs of overseers and priests display finely carved scenes. Boats on the Nile, cattle counts, ritual performances. In some, painted colors linger in protected corners. Deep reds, muted blues, traces of yellow. These images speak of a world that valued continuity, order, and the careful recording of roles. A carved hand stretches toward offerings. A painted eye looks sideways along a wall. Each figure represents a person who planned, managed, or served within the system that made the pyramids possible. Their lives intertwined with the stones above. Further south on the plateau, excavated remains of the workers' village show rows of small rooms, courtyards, and communal bakeries. Ash layers record countless fires lit to bake bread and heat beer. Animal bones, pottery, and tools lie in orderly storage, ready for study. Here the builders appear not as nameless masses, but as organized communities with diets, injuries, and periods of rest. A reconstructed loaf of ancient bread sits in a display case nearby, its surface cracked with age. It is a simple object, yet it connects the abstract idea of workers to individual hands that kneaded dough before dawn. Technologies of observation have changed too. Aerial photography, satellite imagery, and 3D scanning map Giza with a fineness unimaginable to ancient surveyors, yet curiously akin in spirit. Both ancient and modern methods seek alignment, proportion, and understanding of space. Maps reveal subtle depressions where lost structures lie, and slight changes in color that indicate buried walls. On a screen in a nearby research center, the pyramids appear as clean outlines against surrounding data. A cursor moves, tracing causeways and tomb clusters. The vast stone forms that once dominated the imagination now share their story with hidden, smaller features revealed from above. In museum galleries around the world, artifacts from Old Kingdom Egypt rest in controlled light. Limestone reliefs show men hauling statues, scribes recording totals, offering bearers walking in long files. Tools, copper chisels, wooden mallets, stone pounders, sit in quiet rows. A small clay seal impression bears the name of Khufu. Nearby, a fragment of papyrus preserves details of stone shipments for pyramid building. Visitors move slowly between these cases, reading descriptions, leaning closer to inspect tool marks. The objects are modest in size, yet they carry the weight of a process that reshaped an entire horizon. The pyramid's legacy extends beyond scholarship. They appear in art, film, literature, and even everyday design. Their triangular silhouette is instantly recognizable, shorthand for both Egypt and the idea of ancient endurance. Children draw them in simple lines, often with a small sun above. Architects and writers reference their proportions when speaking of stability, hierarchy, or time. Yet beneath these symbolic uses lies the reality you have walked through. Floods and fields, quarries and ramps, meals and ledgers, prayers and repairs. The monuments endure not only because they are large, but because they concentrate so many human efforts in one place. Step back now in your mind and view the entire arc. A river that rises and falls, a kingdom that imagines permanence. Experiments in stone at Saqqara and Dashur. A plateau chosen, measured, leveled. Boats carrying limestone and granite. Ramps rising and shifting. Hands hauling, chiseling, smoothing. Temples humming with ritual. Centuries of change, reuse, erosion, curiosity, and study. The pyramids stand through it all, not untouched but still present, their forms softened yet unmistakable. They are less a single event than a long conversation between stone, time, and intention. A conversation you have now gently joined, simply by attending to it. Let your thoughts drift slowly back from the plateau. The heat of the desert softens, the brightness of the sky dims. You carry with you impressions rather than details. The scrape of sled runners over damp sand, the cool hush of interior chambers, the smell of bread in village ovens, the distant line of the Nile gleaming beyond fields. The pyramids settle in your mind, not as puzzles to be solved, but as quiet shapes of effort and hope. Human hands, guided by simple tools and complex belief, lifted stone upon stone until intention took visible, enduring form. Return now to your own room. The surfaces around you are familiar, the outline of furniture in dim light, the feel of your pillow, the gentle rhythm of your breathing. Outside, whatever night lies beyond your window is calm in its own way, holding streets, trees, or open sky instead of sand and stone. The pyramids recede into the distance, part of a wider landscape of history that no longer needs your full attention. You are here, safe and present. Let your thoughts smooth out like desert wind over old blocks, soft and unhurried. The night can carry you the rest of the way.